Hello and welcome to the G3 Pulse podcast. My guest today is Stuart Hunter, Managing Director of Clarion Gaming. Stuart, welcome to the podcast.
Morning, Lewis. How's things? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. All looking forward to a little thing that you're preparing for us in February, but we'll get to that. Am I right in thinking it's been 4 years at Clarion Gaming, or have I over-egged that?
Yeah, it has been just over, I think. So I've been part of the wider Clarion business for, almost 18 years. So I've been around ICE for a long, long time and been to ICE many occasions before I took the role over at Clarion Gaming. But so I know it, and I've been kind of, a voyeur of it. But yeah, got the opportunity to work in the gaming division, about 4 years ago. Time flies.
It's been eventful. I don't know if that's a pun in your industry, but in terms of 2020, obviously. Last normal kind of ice show, 2021, the year that shall not be named. Then you got, the no show, and then half a show in 2023, record-breaking ice 2024. The last ice show, obviously in London, coming up in a month's time, and then we have the first Barcelona show in 2025. I know you and Alex like gathering data and making baselines on facts and analysis. But how do you do that when it's been so tumultuous that there's hardly any baseline for you? Surely.
Yeah, I think it has been challenging. I think everyone has experienced huge challenges over the last 4 years. I guess I can only reflect on my personal challenge and the challenge that we've had within Clarion Gaming. But I think as tough as that COVID period was, and it was really tough, not only from a nice perspective, but also from our organisation perspective. Live events were illegal for many months, if not kind of a year or two. So, it was desperate times. But I think where what we tried to do at that moment was really kind of look at the positives and take the opportunities. And personally, my opportunity at that stage was to, there wasn't much else that we could do apart from jump on Zoom calls for 9 hours a day or 10 hours, or probably felt like 24 hours sometimes. So we spent a lot of time just really getting to know the customers. And I obviously, that was a big mandate for me personally, because of moving over into a new division and a new market and industry. I wanted to get to know everybody. So we spent a huge amount of time doing that. And I think I personally learned a lot. Hopefully the industry felt listened to. And it wasn't just a moment in time. We actively do that all the way throughout the year. We pride ourselves on being very customer centric and really within the industry. But I guess that bit of work that we did for that 18 months or so, when we were all kind of going through those dark moments, really put us in a good position, both to hopefully deliver the shows back in 22 that we did and 23 that we did that were record breaking. And we listened a lot, and we made sure that what we delivered was what the industry wanted. But also in terms of, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a little bit, the evolution of ICE moving to Barcelona. These are all off the back of customer-led decisions in some respects. Barcelona is an example of that. But also, listening to our customers and making decisions. So if I look back to all the shows in that 4 years, I think they've all had a really good reason for being. They've all had, lots of their own merits. Even the show we ran, which was the mini ice, as some people call it, which we would never want to run again. But for the customers that asked us to run it, we did it, and I think they had a believable experience. And I think some of them wanted it to happen, some of it needed it to happen, and we put it on. And that's something that our customers asked us to do. So I guess that's an example. And then, the show in 23, almost this time last year, was, I think, a relief for everybody, really coming back strong, uniting the industry together. But you can do that from an emotive sense. But what you can't do is assume that great business is going to be done. But it was, and that's all what the data suggests for 23. So 24, we are a matter of just a few weeks away. So we're really excited for it.
Yeah, here too. In terms of, I think you were on an AGM call recently in which you teased that maybe something special coming for ICE, and I was wondering, are you preparing to go out with a bang in London next month? What are going to be the highlights for you, and what's going to feel like leaving Excel?
Oh, really interesting question. I think it's going to feel emotive, actually, I think. And not just for me, but for those that, I listen to lots of stories that people have been to ICE for decades in some regards. And, We talk about ice being in the UK or London in various forms for well over 80 years. So it's got deep roots in the UK market. It's had deep roots at Excel since 2012. But and I was around at that time, and I could see the team and Kate Chambers at the time doing a lot of work with the other brands and trying to convince them that it was going to be okay of moving from Earl's Court, just 7 or 8 miles or whatever it is, over to Excel, and looking back at some of the strategy around that to make sure that worked, and I'm sure that was challenging at that time. But look what's happened. Excel's provided a great infrastructure and a kind of environment for the ice show to grow, and it has grown massively, and grown to the point where it's outgrown Excel in many regards, and that's the industry growing. Ice is the kind of the vehicle for that, but that's just a good sign of the health of the industry. So, we will be sad to leave Excel in that regard, but actually, I've moved on quite a lot in this whole kind of cycle, leading the kind of the process around relocation, because I've seen actually what the future, or certainly what I believe an element of the future can look like with a migration, and that is hugely exciting. And we'll touch on that in a bit. So it's lots of excitement about the future, but we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. I've got separate teams, and we've got a whole business strategy working in parallel for the Barcelona show, and that's been happening for really since August, since we made the announcement. That's been happening, and there's loads of work in the background. But we've got our existing ICE team that's delivering ICE and iGBL affiliate in a few weeks. So we have a few things planned. We want to make sure that, as is always the case, ICE and iGBL affiliate are very business orientated. But where we've got those touch points, where we've got some celebratory moments, we are really going to, what I hope we can achieve is give London the send-off that it deserves, and a welcome to Barcelona. So I guess one thing I can say is we're doing a closing ceremony this year, which we've never done before. We always do an opening ceremony, which kind of opens the show, and that's always a bit of a moment. And then we'll be doing something from a closing perspective. So I'm not going to big it up too much to say that it's going to be like the passing of the baton on the games, but we certainly
not Olympics.
Not Olympics, no. But we want to record that moment. So there's lots of things, and there'll be things throughout the shows that hopefully people will pick up on and go, it's a nice touch, because we've shown industry benefited very well from that space in London.
Well, you've been very clear about listening to the stakeholders at the show to make in terms of the decisions you made, and I just wondered, moving on to kind of Barcelona, has that ticked all the boxes for the exhibitors? There were lots of, obviously the previous shows, there was lots of kind of discussions and arguments talking about what they wanted and how they wanted. Has that met all the requirements? And how have you been allocating the space? Is there a particular ICE formula?
It's probably the biggest challenge, I would say, in terms of redesigning the event in a new format and in a new venue. But it's something that is probably the most rewarding. So it does take a bit of time. So I'll talk about that in a moment. I'll go back to your first point, which was, are we ticking all the boxes? I think that's probably largely impossible, as much as we might try. I think I'd like to think we're ticking most of the boxes, certainly from what our customers are telling us. We are ticking the right boxes. We've run a couple of events so far for the bigger customers, a couple of orientation days where we've taken site visits and tours around the city and within the venue and met partners, etc. And the feedback from those events, there's been about 40 companies that have had the opportunity to do that with us so far. I said that they're advisory board customers, and just to make sure that we're clear about what that means is they are the biggest space takers, but they're also a broad spectrum across sectors. So there's a real broad spectrum of companies within that mix. But the feedback that we've had from those days has been out of this world. They've been really appreciative of the schedule that was put together, and we work with it from a Clarion perspective, but also with the venue and also with the city. So it was really kind of an enjoyable experience. But a lot of fact finding, a lot of learning. We're going to be doing the same thing again. I think March, April time for the entire exhibitor universe. So that's going to go out with dates probably once we've closed ICE, just to give everyone a moment to kind of breathe. But we'll be offering a similar sort of version for that. So anyone that wants to get some level of experience out in Barcelona and the venue, then they'll have the opportunity to do that. We've also filmed a virtual tour as well before Christmas. So there's lots of information we're putting out there, which hopefully will kind of give everyone what they need. In terms of ticking everyone's boxes, I think that's going to be a work in progress all the way through. Obviously, the number one question most of our exhibitor base give us is really kind of, what space am I going to get? Where am I going to be, etc. So that is the bigger challenge. And we've been working through those top 40 companies to make sure that we can accommodate them first, because once we've built those companies on the floor plan, then it's a little bit easier to build everything around them. And, some of those builds are hugely complex. They require lots of different sign-off from a health and safety and a kind of flow perspective. So that's why it's taken a bit of time. But what I would say is positive, and this wasn't anywhere for a reason why why our customers wanted to move initially around space. But one of the benefits of a Barcelona venue now is that customers do have a little bit more room to breathe if they want to. So certain customers that have been asking us to do things in Excel for many years, we haven't been able to say yes because we haven't had the space, but now it's allowing them to do that. So what I'm seeing from a selection of customers is that real creativity of, right, okay, this is how we want to present our business for the future. It needs to look like this. So this new floor plan is allowing them to do that a little bit. So that's taking a bit of time for us to plot that. We kind of wanted to have the big bulk of the exhibition mapped by the end of January, beginning of February by ICE. I think we're a little bit behind that, but that's not a concern really. It's come out of this kind of companies wanting a little bit more, something a bit different. So we're in a great position, I think. And then as soon as we can get the big guys plotted and all confirmed, then we'll start to open that up to everybody else. So I hope sometime in the spring we'll have a floor plan which we can start to at least share with the rest of the industry to say, look, this is the new kind of format for ICE. But there has been some changes in terms of how we present the show. We've gone a little bit more sector orientated in some regards. The way the venue's laid out, it's allowed us to do that. But I think, it's exciting, and it's just anything new comes with a bit of trepidation when you from an operational perspective. But everything so far we've been able to handle. And like I said, Barcelona, the Fear is a world-class venue, so they're used to operating huge trade shows bigger than ICE. So we've had no problems there.
Okay, that's one of the questions I'll get to. But I first want to ask is it's moving to the earlier dates for us as a publisher that's been painful. Has it caused any consternation with any of the visitors or exhibitors going to January?
We tested that way back when we vocalized that we were going to formally run this process. We obviously had some, there's a certain element of venues that you can utilize in Europe that can accommodate, show the size and scale of ICE. And the number one question you ask all of those venues is, do you have the space and the vacancy? And a lot of them don't, because it's a peak time really for a lot of big trade shows. So the ones that we sort of shortlisted down, they could get us somewhere within that Q1 date line, because going back to our opening conversation around speaking to customers and customer centricity, the vast majority said ICE needs to be in that Q1. That's an important time for their business and the cycle of purchasing, etc. So we made sure that was a mandate when we spoke to the venues, and the venues have done their very best to say, look, okay, we can find you dates here. Some were a little bit later in March, some were a little bit later in February, but they had to change. And the dates for Barcelona, as you know, are a little earlier in January. So we shared that with everybody during the process, and the vast majority were like, no problem. It just means we've got to redesign our preparation a little bit differently, but we can make it happen. And in some respects, actually, we had some good feedback when I was out in Las Vegas last August, chatting to a lot of the operators, and because it's a little bit earlier, it doesn't cross over with Super Bowl, so there should be a higher opportunity for the US C-level guys to come to ICE. I certainly heard that firsthand. So it just means we've got to shift a little bit and change our sort of operational shift, and like yourself, just plan a little bit earlier. But hopefully everyone can make it happen.
Well, like I say, it's just logistics. And I going back to what you touched upon earlier, from that context, Barcelona, Is it actually set up for a nice event, something of this scale? You mentioned about the kind of the mobile gaming show that takes place, but I just wondered, in terms of flights, in terms of hotels, restaurants, local transportation, is it geared up for that time of year? Because there's a lot more flights there in the summer than there are in the winter time, and I was wondering, how do you communicate all this to the kind of the ice audience?
Yeah, so we've kept our communications quite low key to the wider industry up until this point for good reason, because I didn't want to dilute any of the momentum for ICE London in the end of this month, beginning of February. We really wanted to make sure that is the core focus, because everyone invests a huge amount of money and time in making sure that ICE is successful for their business, and we didn't want to take a moment's gloss away from that. So you'll see communications from our perspective out to the wider industry really start to ramp up from March time, really. And we have a lot to tell. We've kept a lot of things back, and there's a huge amount of great positives that we can start to share. And we're itching to do that, but we know it's not the right time to do it just yet. So there'll be an element of that broadcast, really. And we kind of plan on doing almost a year-round campaign for ICE, unlike what we've done before, where we usually kick in 3 months prior to the show. So we expect to kind of have an evolution of an update to the industry to say, look, this is what's happening and how it's going to work. But in terms of those specific questions, yeah, the in-depth process that we went to with an external consultant agency looked at huge amounts of variables across the entire piece, and everything from flight time to volume of flights to hotel rooms, hotel price, accessibility, number of taxis. All these different contributing elements were all under the microscope, and all that data was shared, obviously, with us, but also with our advisory group that saw that data, that could then make a decision based on what they believed was the right thing. So I think that Barcelona is a perfect home for ICE and for a large-scale trade show, and I see that more and more times that I go out there, more and more times that I meet with the venue. And I guess, look, one point to make, which I don't think we've done yet, we might have mentioned in some early PR when we did the announcement in August, is we've got a relationship with the city for ICE going forward, which we don't have with ICE in London. You know, we have a venue relationship. Excel has a relationship kind of with the city, but it's never really embraced ICE in terms of a more detailed relationship. Whereas Barcelona, we've got our relationship with the city as well as the venue. So the city are putting everything on to ensure that the experience when you're outside of the trade show is absolutely elevated to what you currently would experience if you went to another trade show in Barcelona, or a smaller trade show in Barcelona, but also in London. So we've got lots of people that are all contributing to that experience. We've got relationships with the airlines, as an example. These are all things we've never had before. So we've really elevated from the organizer perspective, the volume of our relationships across the whole piece. Relationships with all the key major hotels, relationships with the infrastructure in the city. All of these things that we haven't had a grasp on before, we can now build into the ICE proposition. So that's what fills me with most excitement, because we really truly believe, and I feel strongly about this post-COVID. And I felt within my teams, I said, look, when we're getting customers to come back to ICE, or any of our events, quite frankly, but let's use ICE as an example, coming back to ICE after COVID, we've got to elevate that experience, because there's still a fear factor, or there was a fear factor, that people were still wanting to hide behind their Zoom and Teams calls and not travel. And I wanted to at least make sure that if they traveled, they felt that it was really worth that investment, because it was harder to travel a couple of years ago. People were still a little bit anxious about COVID, etc. So we wanted to elevate that experience, and we want to keep that going. We want ICE to feel like a festival, a true festival, in the sense of, when you're on site doing your business meetings, I should say, and all of the dealings and all of the content you're experiencing. When you're outside in the hotels, maybe you checked into your room and you see a live stream of Vox that's happened at ICE that day. That's a continuation of ICE. Maybe you're going to a restaurant with a dedicated ICE menu. The amount of venues that we've got on hold from the city in terms of creating these pop-up experiences all the way throughout. So it's going to extend ICE's campus, and I think Barcelona is a really good city to get around. And I think all of those little areas where we can create that 4 days worth of festivalization for the gaming industry and for ICE, I think it's going to create a really dynamic experience and take the ICE experience up a notch. That's certainly our aim.
Hmm. You mentioned convincing people to travel, and this part of the percentage coming from the UK to ICE over the years has historically been really high. I don't know if you've got exact figure, but I could quote like 40% or so in terms of the kind of UK visitorship. How do you convince all those guys to come to Barcelona? And did you expect them all to come?
So I'd say latest data, I think for 23 was about 35%. I think were UK audience based. So as you can see, the vast majority are not UK. So I think that if I flip it on one side, I think, will we grow that non-UK based audience? Absolutely. We're seeing that already in terms of some of the relationships that we're building within Spain as being from a domestic perspective, but also in the wider European continent. Chatting to a lot of our partners at the ECA, talking to a lot of the kind of casino operators, they will be sending more staff and more teams. The amount of casinos that the show now opens up to in terms of the ease for them to access ICE being in Barcelona. So I think the European contingent and the global contingent will continue to increase. I think the access to the LATAM region, I think, will be a really great opportunity for ICE, especially while we've seen the news around Brazil. That's exciting, and I think that connection out there, certainly into that space, I think that will be a really good thing, and we're seeing that already in terms of the enthusiasm from the LATAM region. In terms of the UK, do I think everyone will come across? I don't know is the answer. I guess we're staying really close to our UK market and those customers that attend ICE. And what I'm hearing and seeing at the moment is that they absolutely will. And I think they will for two reasons. One, because they do truly see ICE as a must attend. From a business perspective, if you're in the gaming industry, they feel like they have to be there. Whether it's from a networking or to be seen perspective or from a content engagement perspective, I think they do. I think if they have a procurement obligation from a purchasing perspective, there is no better showcase than ICE in terms of products and services across all those sectors. So I think there's a real need. There will still be a need just because it's moved from UK to Spain. I think that need will still be there, and hopefully we can make that need even greater. I think also from an experience perspective, I don't know about you, but Barcelona for 4 days at the end of January, if you're living in the UK, is a real touch. If I'm honest with you, I think getting that opportunity to go to Barcelona and escape some of the winter dreariness, I think is a positive. So I'm hoping that's another motivating factor. All that aside, we're going into our strategy assuming that we've got to work harder than ever to retain that UK customer. So we're working with a lot of our exhibitor base that rely on that UK customer, and we're saying, right, okay, who's your customer, and how can we make it easier for them to travel to Barcelona and make sure we get them across. So we've got lots of initiatives, lots of investment to make sure that we do scoop up that UK audience and bring them to Barcelona. I won't go into all the detail here now, but it's absolutely on our kind of top list of things that we must retain. Because if we can retain that UK audience and then grow the European and LATAM audience as an example, then we're taking ICE up to 50,000 attendees or 55,000 attendees, which is where I believe it should be over the next couple of years. So I think we're doing lots. Will absolutely everyone want to come? I think those customers that perhaps live very locally to Excel, that come for a day trip, we might struggle with them, but we'll do our best to make sure they feel motivated to come across. Interestingly, from a cost perspective, if you live outside of London and you come to ICE in London for a couple of days, it's cheaper for you to go to Barcelona than it is for you to go to London. So from a cost perspective, it's not prohibitive. It's just a little bit more of your time. But we'll share more in the next year on kind of some of the tangibles on how we're doing that. But absolutely, it's number one on our list to make sure that we bring everybody with us, because ICE is a gathering of great minds and great people, and we saw that in 2023, which it is better. We are better together, so we'll do all our best to make sure that we can do that.
Okay. Anyway, on a similar kind of vein about obviously the show being in a different location, ICE historically hasn't travelled, and by that, we're thinking of the different shows that were held for ICE around the years before your tenure. How do you ensure that the event mirrors the success of London in a location that's remote to your team? Because obviously do you have a team in Barcelona? Do you work and coordinate? And how do you manage that, Stuart?
Yeah. So, do we have a team in Barcelona? Kind of, I would say, but we're growing. We're investing. We're opening office space there. We're building a team on the ground there. As a wider business, we operate shows globally. The vast majority of our shows that we run are outside of the UK as a wider business, 200 or so events. So we're used to operating in all major cities, all major venues pretty much. So we can adapt. And even from Clarion Gaming perspective, we run iGBL Live in Amsterdam. So in some regards, it's useful having domestic teams, certainly operationally, more than some regards. But for Barcelona, because really there's a whole opportunity for us to get domestic in that space, in that industry, and see what we can explore from a European perspective. I'm building an office space there. We are getting teams there, certainly for the first year or two to see how we become established. So we're investing in that, and that is something that we believe is important. But can I be successful without that? Yeah, 100%, because we're traveling all of the time. We're team and I are in Barcelona at the moment. Practically feels like 2-3 times a month. So, we've got relationships there. And I think the world's smaller now digitally, so we can, it's easier for us to kind of be a bit more effective, whether we're staying in London or not. But I think really there's an opportunity for us to explore the best of all the worlds in that regard. So I think the examples you gave before were us looking at launching, I guess, geo-adapted versions of ICE, which to some success. I think COVID made us realise that actually we need to focus on kind of the main mothership really at that moment in time, and that's kind of what we've done. But I certainly think picking up, the world's biggest trade show, and remind everyone it is the biggest trade show by a country mile. So we are picking it up and we're migrating it to a new location. But I think when everyone gets to really understand and see what that means and what opportunities that's going to create, and to see how the experience is going to be enhanced, I think they'll share the same excitement that we've got, the team that are close to it. So I think that's good. And then, actually, one thing I didn't touch up on, obviously, is our iGBL Live event is migrating from Amsterdam back to London, and that's for a very clear reason, which is when we spoke to our iGBL affiliate community. We said, look, we're looking at this from an ICE perspective. A lot of our big ICE customers are asking us, and the media are asking us to look at it and explore. And we asked them, so look, what would be your preference? And quite a few of them said, look, our preference from an iGaming perspective and an iGaming affiliate perspective is to stay in London, because that's, it's a really strong and large market. But if ICE does move, then we have to stay with ICE, because we understand the opportunity of being part of the big global show. So we've kind of done the best of both worlds, really. We've migrated iGBL affiliate with ICE to Barcelona, but then we've looked at our iGBL Live event, moved it back into London, which gives them that home show, which they really need, really. So that moves in 2025 as well. So a lot of change for us in 25, but all for very, very good reason, and all backed up by really good customer support. So we're excited by all those changes.
Well, probably the kind of question about iGBL Live would be, what's happening? Is there a big send-off for iGBL Live in Amsterdam? And talking about the space at Excel is a very different space to RAI. It feels dimensionally. How do you keep the same atmosphere of that show? But are you taking partial parts of Excel, or are you ramping it off? Is it taking, what kind of size and scale can we expect for iGBL Live?
Yeah, well, iGBL Live is growing. It's fast growing, actually. It's growing for this year's show in Amsterdam. We had to take new halls to allow that growth, and the space that we've got reserved is a portion of Excel, but big still. So it's still growing on its own right in that regard. But I think your point is a very valid one, in the sense that over the last 4 years or so, we've created a really, really exciting vibe in Amsterdam in that space. It's lent itself to the kind of the type of customer groups that we get at iGBL Live, and the type of atmosphere that we're able to create in that space. So I think we've got some really exciting ideas on how we're going to achieve that in London. I say we haven't got all the answers just yet in terms of the cycle of where we plan those things. That's coming quite soon. But Excel are under no illusion that they need to support in terms of how we kind of recreate that vibe on site, and they're being really proactive with us on how we achieve that. But one thing I would say is that we haven't run a gaming show in summer in London before. And anyone that's been to ICE in February, as lovely as London is on a crisp February morning, it's 10 times better in July. So the experiences that we're able to create in July for iGBL Live, I think, are going to sort of surpass, in some regards, what we've been able to achieve in Amsterdam. So I think, we love Amsterdam. It's a great city. It's been a great home, but I'm equally excited about what we can do with that brand when it arrives back in London, and we can really explore that summertime in one of the greatest cities.
Okay, and sticking with iGB Live, we were expecting the North America one to be in December, just gone. The show's been conjoined with the Indian Gaming Show. I just wondered what was the thinking behind that kind of move, and what's the event kind of growth that you're expecting for iGB Live North America? Now it's kind of conjoined in with it's in San Diego, the next one, isn't it, the Indian Gaming one?
Actually, it's in Anaheim. It rotates a little bit. It's in Anaheim.
All right. Okay.
April this year, just outside of Los Angeles.
Okay.
I guess before I talk about that, it's probably important that I take a step back and just give you a bit of a clear picture of our relationship with Indian gaming, because I think then that helps me. That then helps me answer that question in tandem. So. Obviously, this iGBL Live North America came about really with our relationship with Indian Gaming. It was that opportunity to work with them, and we're partners with their trade show. We've worked with them on it for many years, and we stay very close to them. They own the trade show. We help them organising, and we're very close partners in that regard. So when we were talking about how can we bring a kind of an iGaming opportunity into the US market, which a lot of our customers were asking for, it was really around how can we work with the Indian gaming community to create a platform that allows that huge part. It's $50 billion industry in the US, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of tribal gaming, and there's a real thirst for actually how can they get access to that online element. So with our relationship together, we sort of started discussing, there's a way we can bring our iGBL Live brand together and bring it across into the US. But going back to the very beginning of this conversation, that was kind of our internal idea of how we can facilitate an opportunity in the US. But when you start to speak to a lot of our customer base, it was really a conversation of actually, wouldn't it be a more logical thing for it actually just to kind of conjoin with the Indian Gaming Association? That's where the industry really sits. It's the G2E of the tribal community, essentially. So if we can fast track an event that we had planned in New York, I should say, into the tribal event, then we're almost kind of skipping a couple of steps out. So, I think that's where we got to after we engaged with a lot of our key customers. And I think the conversation we've had with them since then has been really positive for saying, look, you know what, that's the right place for it. So it's working with, and actually there's a bit of a shift with the name as well. I think the iGB name from our perspective is more European, well-known, I would say, than US. So we've been working a lot with the Indian gaming community to make sure that the proposition that we land with at the show this year in April time is absolutely right for that market space. So that's kind of how we've evolved. So it's been one of those things where we started with that opportunity, validated it, gone on that journey, and really kind of off the back of customer feedback decided actually this is the best place where we can create that opportunity. So it feels a little bit step by step, but that's hopefully what we believe will deliver the success it needs, really.
Okay. Well, thanks for outlining all the kind of the behind the scenes parts of that as well. I kind of final kind of question, and as a wrap up, Stuart. I mean, we've had all this. We started off by saying it was all tumultuous and lots of things happening, shows moving, changing around. I've been on bunches of calls with you where you fielded, really pointy questions from the industry and had to kind of bat them away. You've now got a roadmap for ICE and iGBL Live for the next 5 years. It's all mapped out in front. Are we into kind of plain sailing territory? Or am I still going to be pelting questions that you can't answer now for the next years to come? Or are we all good? Are you getting calmer now? Are you looking ahead and this is all going to be smooth?
Oh, I think it's funny you say. I think that COVID period. I think I joined Clarion Game. Not even a year in, maybe 9 months in, and then kind of COVID happened. And that is a moment where we all saw the whites of our own eyes, right? You had to make some pretty big calls on that one. So if you put yourself in a leadership position and then you can't lead a team and make those tough calls, then you're in the wrong job, I think. And as tough as it was at the time, I think we had to make those calls, and I wouldn't change any of the calls we made. Even like I said at the beginning, running the ice event with the absence of those big guys, there was some kind of points thrown to say, well, how could you run an event without those kind of leading brands? And at the time, our customers were saying, look, we need the show to happen. And from our perspective, as a Clarion business, we probably would have been easier for us not to run that show in 22. But we decided that actually we wanted to. So we made some pretty big decisions during that period. And as kind of scary as it is, because the world was in a wacky place. It's still fairly wacky now, to be honest, but it's a wackier place from a COVID perspective. These were big calls and big decisions, and to do that so early on, I guess, in my Clarion gaming journey was it is what it is. You can't predict how tumultuous, to use your phrase, things are going to be, but you just have to deal with what's in front of you. So I think dealing with that, we got through it. Like I said, the satisfaction for all of us, for the team as well, but also for the industry on the 2023 event. I'd be lying to say if we didn't have a moment as a team and exhaled and felt quite relieved that everything, not just, we were confident that everyone was going to work well, but it worked a little beyond everyone's expectations, which I think was really positive. And I think we've taken all of that energy and enthusiasms to make the 24 show, if we can, even better than the 23 show. And that's why we kind of adopted our creative concept of more this year, which is not just a qualitative perspective, it's quantitative, and it's all of the kind of elements of positive feedback we got for the 2023 show. How can we take that up a level, on every level? The value of connections, the value of the content, creativity, the experience, the ease of use, all the tools that we provide, all those areas we try to do a little bit more. So I'm hoping I'm hoping we deliver that in a few weeks' time. But that keeps everyone motivated massively. And then I think the process of looking at ice in terms of whether it's still in the right location or not, that really came off the back of all that in-depth conversations during COVID, because the customers had been asking that, or certainly expressing concerns about London location for many years before I arrived. But I think it elevated during COVID, and then I think lots of other factors compounded that. So in my respect, it was a duty of care for us to take that seriously, and we did. And I think we ran a really good, robust process. We brought a great company in, which, to think we could have done that on our own would certainly have been completely foolish. So bringing an expert agency in to look at it in a completely different way and maximise the opportunity for everybody by running through a kind of a bid process with these cities, I think was really the right moves. And now we're in the exciting part of building it and making it happen. And like I said, each moment we get as a team where we get together, or next trip, or any kind of new conversational connection we're making in Barcelona, I feel even more excited than I did the day before in terms of what this looks like. And if you speak to any of the 40 big companies that have already had the orientation day, and hopefully everyone else in March, they'll start to get a taste of that. So there is huge amounts of work to be done over the next 12, 18 months. And I'm sure we'll deliver a great show in 25, but then we go again for 26, and we've got to continue to evolve and build. And look, that keeps me totally motivated. I think it's a dangerous place when you sit back and feel like you've kind of completed it, because we haven't. We've just, I think we've moved to a different set of tracks now. Tracks that, like you said, have got 5 years ahead of them, not 5 months.
Yeah.
So that's exciting to have that roadmap. And I think, there'll be plenty of bumps in the road, but there always are. But I think we're fit enough, and we've all been through the motions now, and we've got really good relationships in the industry to ride through those. And we do all this for what our customers want. So if our customers say they want something, or they want something different or changed or whatever, then we really do act on it, because we want to make sure that the ICE and all our products and services are for the industry, and that's the way we have to make it work.
No, much appreciated. The same, I think, without being too political, I think you were the right man with the right skill set during the COVID kind of break as well, Stuart. So really appreciate you going through everything. Good luck with all the preparations, and look forward to seeing you at ICE in a couple of weeks' time. Good luck with everything.
No, I really appreciate it, Lewis. Thanks for your time today, and yeah, we'll definitely see you in a few weeks' time.
Hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you want to watch more, why not subscribe to our channel? Just click here.